murder, or was it? The wife of a wealthy businessman goes missing.
I think she was placing herself at risk. The promiscuous behavior.
Her body never found.
People don't just vanish into thin air.
Years later, her husband is charged with her murder.
Everybody knows he's guilty.
On trial not once or twice, but 4 times for killing her.
The evidence that they claimed to have was either manufactured by them, manipulated by them, or just outright false.
What really happened the day the stunning mother of 4 disappeared?
No one will come forward and speak. The perception out there is of Cal as a vindictive person.
This man is at the epicenter of that question. Cal Harris, a pariah after 4 trials, and he still says under a cloud of suspicion for killing his wife.
People at home, they want to know, Cal, did you have anything?
Absolutely not.
I don't even have to finish my sentence.
Absolutely not.
Harris sits down with our Michelle Sigona over a series of days to unravel his side of a mysterious story. For him, the last chapter won't be written until certain people pay.
I'm done taking crap from people.
It had all started so picture perfect. Beautiful Michelle Taylor met Calvin Harris while working at one of the car dealerships his family owned. Cal came from one of the most prominent families in Tioga County, upstate New York.
What drew you to Michelle?
She was very attractive, very fun, loving. You just noticed her when she walked in the room.
They fell in love.
Hi, Michelle. Take deep cup.
Married and built their dream home on 250 acres, which came with a private lake. 4 kids soon followed: Taylor, Kayla, Jenna, and Tanner.
She was a great mom. I'm not sure to this day exactly what happened, but I think having 4 children in a row that close was difficult for her. Something happened, I can't tell you what it is.
It seemed like their life went from a fairy tale to something far less idyllic. There was infidelity.
Did you cheat on Michelle?
We both did.
Reportedly, Cal cheated first, and Michelle was devastated by it. After 10 years of marriage, Michelle filed for divorce.
I'll certainly take my fair share of the responsibility for why our marriage didn't work out.
But according to Michelle, there were other serious problems in the marriage. There were allegations of Cal's controlling behavior and even physical abuse.
Michelle had said she had been scared for her life, and there were reported journal entries about alleged, domestic violence and abuse. What do you say about all of that?
These allegations, these rumors, if these were true, she would have certainly put them in her divorce papers.
So as far as the actual proof, you're saying there is none?
None.
Crime Watch Daily did obtain court divorce papers, and it seems many allegations were made, black on white.
I'm going to read this to you. Among the statements in the filing, Michelle writes, quote, "My husband had been physically abusive to me only on 2 to 3 occasions when he struck me or attempted to physically harm me." Michelle also stated that in at least one occasion, you allegedly attempted to kill her while standing over top of her, and that she had fallen and she was terrified. How do you explain her allegations?
She's trying to get temporary custody of the house and kids. So she's going to say whatever she's got to say to try to accomplish that goal.
And reportedly, Michelle told her sister-in-law, Shannon Taylor, Cal threatened her, saying, "I got the perfect place to put your body. They'll never find you." Despite the conflict between them, Cal and Michelle lived together during the separation.
We lived together for almost 9 months while the divorce was going on. So early on, it was contentious.
Michelle even had Cal's guns removed from the home.
I was upset by that. It was a childish thing.
Michelle got a job at Lefty's, a restaurant bar some say attracted a rough crowd.
There are shady people hanging out there.
And Cal claims Michelle changed when she started working there.
She had been staying out late. She had a boyfriend.
Cal insists he wanted to reconcile.
I was always holding out hope that we would work things out.
But reportedly, Michelle wanted the opposite. Cal says Michelle eventually agreed to a divorce settlement. He offered almost $800,000 over 10 years. Others say the divorce was nowhere near being resolved. In any case, most agree at least on this. Michelle was happy again, her life on the upswing, until that is, the very worst happened. It was September 11th, 2001. And while the country was reeling from the most devastating tragedy ever to happen on U.S. soil, another catastrophe would be hitting much closer to home. Michelle Harris had disappeared. Reportedly, Michelle worked at Lefty's until around 9 p.m. the night of September 11th, had drinks with coworkers, then went to her boyfriend's, leaving his place between 11 and 11:30. That was the last anyone saw of her. Or was it? On the morning of September 12th, Cal woke to realize Michelle, who slept on the sofa, had never come home. He called their nanny, Barbara Thayer, asking her to come over and get the kids ready for school. When Thayer arrived, she described seeing something strange.
She told me that Michelle's van was at the end of the driveway. She said, I looked inside the van, she's not in there. I thought maybe she was hungover and just sleeping.
Cal has his version of events, one that includes a mysterious reference to a bag of expensive jewelry he claims Michelle was carrying around.
So Michelle's van was right here.
Michelle's van is here, facing in, unlocked, keys in the ignition.
What else is in the vehicle?
All her personal stuff. I think the only thing that was missing was her purse and the key. The key was she had that bag of jewelry that she was carrying around. And she had it in a velvet bag, purple bag. And that jewelry she was trying to pawn off. And that was her wedding ring, her Rolex watch, some other jewelry. She had had it appraised at a local pawn shop for over $15,000. And that was missing.
Thayer drove the van up the long driveway to the house, got the kids ready, and took them to school. Cal went to work.
When was the last time you saw Michelle?
Would have been the morning of September 11th, before the towers went down.
What were some of the things that were running through your mind where she could have been?
Barb and I both thought she had been out the night before partying. She was with her boyfriend or her friends.
Michelle's best friend, Nikki Burdick, was one of the first to call looking for her. Hours passed before police were called.
Who contacted the police?
Her close friend called her divorce lawyer, and the divorce lawyer called the state police.
Cal says he cooperated with cops from day one.
That day, I signed release forms to turn over my house to them, to turn over my vehicles to them. I gave them phone records, I gave them my computer, I gave them financial information.
What kind of searches were done on your property?
Dogs, helicopters, C-130 military plane.
And you have a large lake.
40 acres. And they had divers in there, they had sonar in there. They actually had cadaver dogs in boats.
Cal says cops very quickly made him public enemy number one.
There were different men that she was seeing at the same time. They did a cursory investigation on these other suspects, but they were focusing on me and only on me.
Cal admits he took a polygraph. It came back inconclusive. The New York State Police stated Cal did not pass his polygraph. Though a polygraph test would never be admissible as evidence, soon there would be a discovery that would turn the investigation on its head. Beautiful wife and mother Michelle Harris vanished into thin air. Her family van found abandoned at the end of the family's driveway. Cops quickly zeroed in on her wealthy, soon-to-be ex-husband, Cal Harris, as the prime suspect. And investigators found their smoking gun in the family's garage.
Where was the blood spatter?
In this area right here.
Blood in the kitchen.
There were 4 or 5 stains that the detective found. One was down here on this molding. There were 3 or 4 more stains in this area here.
Some spots matched the family dog. Cal says only 3 of the stains came back to match Michelle.
One stain, sub-millimeter, red stain, came back positive for human blood and Michelle's blood in the house. One stain came back positive for Michelle's blood on the throw rug, and one stain came back positive for Michelle's blood in the garage.
Reportedly, 6 drops of Michelle's blood were found in the kitchen and more in the garage. But Cal claims the investigation was compromised from the beginning.
The investigation of this case falls strictly on the shoulders of Sue Andrews Mulvey, the lead investigator on this case. She had a conflict of interest. Her father used to work for me. I fired him, and from day one, she wasn't looking for Michelle, ever. She was coming after me.
You feel you were targeted?
Absolutely.
Sue Mulvey did not respond to calls regarding Cal's specific accusation. But 4 years after Michelle's mysterious disappearance, investigators made their move, arresting Cal Harris and charging him with second-degree murder.
I kept asking my attorney at the time, I go, why now? Is there any new evidence? Did they find something? I mean, is there something we don't know about? And he didn't have an answer for me.
Jury selection began today for the Cal Harris murder trial.
How confident were you going into the first trial?
I thought it was going to be an acquittal. I mean, there's no body, there's no weapon, there's no witness, there's no confession, there's nothing.
Tioga County District Attorney Gerald Keene felt he had enough, arguing that Cal killed Michelle with a blunt object in the late hours of September 11th and disposed of her body.
And so what they're claiming is the event occurred right here in this area.
Somewhere here. She comes in the door, she walks in, she's facing this way, and that supposedly I attack her from behind. And that I strike her in the head once, she falls to the ground, I strike her again, that's where the spatter comes from, she's incapacitated, and then somehow I've got to get her around this door and, you know, drag her out here. It makes no sense to hit somebody hard enough to incapacitate them to the point where they're dying or dead. You can't do that without having massive amounts of blood.
Prosecutors disagreed and brought in famed forensic scientist Dr. Henry Lee, who consulted on the O.J. Simpson case and John Benet Ramsey case.
Dr. Henry Lee looked at the photographs in front of the jury and said, these red stains are, quote, vivid red. And therefore, in my opinion, they're 2 to 3 days old.
Prosecutors claim Michelle's blood in the house was fresh, and they pieced together a picture of other circumstantial evidence. Cal's controlling behavior, the contentious divorce, and his demeanor after Michelle went missing.
What would you say to the people who are thinking you had the motive? You may have wanted to get back together with her, you found out she had a couple of boyfriends, there was jealousy, there was rage.
The quote money that I was going to have to pay her was my offer to her, which I knew I could handle. I knew she had one boyfriend. I didn't know until the trial that she had multiple simultaneously boyfriends. So there's no motive for me.
Would the jury agree? After a 2-week trial, the long-awaited verdict: guilty.
I was devastated. It was just horrible.
But devastation quickly turned into elation, literally the next day with an absolute bombshell. 6 years after Michelle went missing, Kevin Tubbs, a local farmer, came forward saying he saw a blonde woman and a younger man, not Cal, arguing at the end of the Harris driveway near a dark-colored Chevrolet pickup truck on the morning of September 12th. It blew the theory that Cal killed Michelle on September 11th. Many wondered why Tubbs waited so long to come forward, especially the prosecutor.
I have problems with the credibility and the veracity of Mr. Tubbs.
But Judge Martin Smith believed Kevin Tubbs, immediately throwing out Harris's conviction and ordering a new trial.
And I'll never forget it. He turns to me and he points to the sheriff sitting next to me. He says, release him, he's free.
What did you think that day?
I just started bawling. It was just a flood of emotions.
Cal was ecstatic. Michelle's family was livid.
Would you have hoped for something different?
Naturally.
It wasn't over. Both sides prepared for a second trial. This time, Cal took the stand in his own defense. This time, the defense argued that the blood evidence was faulty. Neither worked.
Guilty. That's the verdict jurors handed down to Cal Harris after 10 hours of deliberation.
Michelle's family and friends breathed a sigh of relief.
Justice has been served.
We got justice. I won't bring her back, but we got justice.
Cal Harris was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison.
That really hurt. That really hurt.
Are you seeing your kids every week?
Yes, they would come up on the weekends for visitation. And the hardest part was at the end of the day when they were going to go home and I was going back to my cell. That was the hardest part.
But after 3.5 years behind bars, unbelievably, another bombshell. On appeal, Cal Harris's second murder conviction was thrown out, the court ruling that he did not receive a fair trial. When Cal was told,
I fell to my knees.
2 convictions thrown out. Was it just lady luck, or was Cal's good fortune about to run out? Did wealthy businessman Cal Harris kill his wife? After 2 trials and 2 overturned convictions, the very question was in doubt. The investigators were dogged, and new prosecutors prepped for round 3. This time, Cal also came with a new defense team and a major counterattack plan.
Their position on my case was, look, we're not just going to defend you, we're going to solve this case.
The defense pursued their own suspects in Michelle's disappearance, introducing Stacy Stewart and Chris Thomason, 2 steelworkers who knew Michelle from Lefty's, the rough-and-tumble bar where former convicts were known to hang, and where she worked.
Stacy Stewart killed my wife.
Cops never named Stewart or Thomason as suspects, and both passed polygraphs. Stacy Stewart and his black Chevrolet pickup truck matched Kevin Tubbs' description and the sketch given to cops of what he saw at the end of the Harris driveway.
The fact that that individual, Stacy Stewart, knew Michelle, admitted socializing with her, that was critical.
Stacy told the police that his friend Chris came to his house one night with his girlfriend and they had bloody clothes on and they asked him to burn their clothes. And he gave the story about he thought they had gutted a deer.
The defense team didn't buy it, arguing the bloody clothes were burned the day after Michelle went missing. They believed the evidence would be found at the bottom of Stacy Stewart's backyard burn pit.
We found a forensic anthropologist. We dug up this burn pit and actually found the remnants of burnt clothing.
According to Cal's defense team, they had also found part of a bra strap, a key, a coin, and a knife blade. Only one thing was missing. None of the items could be linked to Michelle Harris. And there was more bad news for Cal.
The judge wouldn't let us present any of that evidence to the jury.
All was not lost. With just enough doubt, this time the jury could not come to a unanimous verdict.
The judge declares a mistrial in the 3rd Cal Harris murder trial.
So it's a hung jury.
Everybody was excited but me, because I knew another trial was coming. They were trying to break me, physically, emotionally, financially.
I did not have anything to do with Michelle's disappearance. One day, I hope to be able to prove that to everyone's satisfaction.
A year later, Cal would get that chance at trial number 4. This go-around, Cal opted for a bench trial. Judge Richard Mott would hear the case and render a verdict.
We needed to have our evidence implicating the other men come into the evidence.
Judge Mott allowed testimony and evidence about Stacy Stewart and Chris Thomason, though neither man testified at trial. And the blood evidence took a major hit.
The photographs that they had taken and had used in the 1st and 2nd trial were altered intentionally. The judge ruled, you cannot talk about color.
Cal says their own investigation uncovered footage proving that photos of the bloodstains Dr. Henry Lee analyzed in previous trials had been digitally altered to look more vividly red and therefore fresher.
I'll never forget that moment. The judge turns to Gerald Keene and he says, Mr. Keene, would you agree that there's no scientific way to age the blood? And he says, yes. And that's the argument that Jerry Keene made to the jury in his summation.
The closing arguments in the 4th trial were on dramatic display by defense attorney Bruce Barquette.
The lack of investigation of Stewart, and the mismanagement of the collection of the blood, and the mismanagement of the photographing and documenting of the staining in the areas. I'm asking the court to find Mr. Harris not guilty because there's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed this offense.
District Attorney Kirk Martin's words were equally impassioned.
Michelle died in an act of domestic violence at the hands of her familiar adversary. Michelle died at the hands of her husband, the defendant, Calvin Harris.
After 12 hours of deliberations, Judge Mott was ready to render his verdict.
When he came through that door, I saw the look on his face, and he was angry. I'm like, he's going to convict me.
Then the decision.
When you heard the words not guilty?
I didn't hear it. I didn't hear it. I was blacked out. And next thing I know, my heart's racing, and I turn around, and kids are crying and hugging. And
after 15 years, it was finally over. Cal could never be tried again for the death of his wife, Michelle Harris.
It's just been a roller coaster.
The trials may be over, but there are inconsistencies and lingering questions. We needed answers. Remember, Cal did respond to allegations of domestic abuse, claiming if it was so bad, Michelle would have cited it in divorce papers. He claims no action was taken by the court on her claims.
I responded to what actually happened, and the judge didn't believe anything in her paperwork, and he didn't grant her anything she asked for.
And what about Michelle allegedly telling her sister-in-law that Cal had threatened her, saying, "I got the perfect place to put your body. They'll never find you."
That statement was never put in her divorce papers. Now, if she's going to try to get temporary custody of the house, temporary custody of the kids, that would be something that would be very powerful. So the question is, how legit, how real is this statement that was supposedly made by her to these other people?
Michelle had requested an order of protection but never filed it with the court. But one piece of evidence still looms. Exactly how did Michelle's blood get in the garage and kitchen? Cal says it's possibly from an altercation Michelle described in her divorce papers.
Michelle tells her that we got in an argument out in the driveway and that I pushed her away from me and that she fell and cut her hand in the driveway on the snow and ice. She walked in here, which she would have done, and she was either bleeding from her hand and it was dripping, or she was shaking the water off her hand and the snow and the ice, and it deposited there, and then she walked into the house. So she comes in, closes the door, again, maybe she shakes her hand, tries to wash off the snow and the ice, whatever, or flicks it, and it's deposited there. We don't know that. We don't know that it came from that because you can't age the blood.
All the questions seem to have a Cal answer. But after 4 trials, life for Harris will never be the same, and the man who stood accused may never truly escape.
New York State Police have charged Cal Harris with 4th-degree stalking.
Beautiful Michelle Harris's body was never found, her murder never solved. Her millionaire husband, Cal Harris, tried 4 times, eventually acquitted.
I think it's disgusting. All these trials, wasting all the taxpayers' money. Everybody knows he's guilty.
But has the cloud of doubt and accusation that now hangs heavy over Cal Harris made him a bitter man?
Let me explain to you, okay? I'm done. I'm done taking crap from people. I'm done being called a murderer.
But his problems are not over. Shortly after the 4th trial, Cal was arrested.
New York State Police have charged Cal Harris with 4th-degree stalking.
By the same police who cuffed him for his wife's murder.
They say he verbally threatened an off-duty member of the state police and his family while standing in front of that member's home in Oneonta.
I'll tell you now, I almost think it was a setup.
During this alleged confrontation, you're quoted as saying, quote, "I'm going to get all you guys, maybe go drag your son out of school, and I've been following him around." Have you been following anyone connected to this case?
Absolutely not.
Cal admits there have been 2 other harassment charges filed. Cal was recently found guilty, fined $100, and sentenced to anger management for one of the 2 charges against him. Yet he seems unfazed.
There was a woman who made comments about you, and then you posted her home address allegedly and called her a bed-hopping slut. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Cal admits he's angry. Some might see it as vengeful. He often takes to social media, calling out those who've wronged him, and he continues to push his own theories about what happened to his wife.
Well, who do you think murdered her?
Stacy Stewart.
But Crime Watch Daily didn't take Cal's word for it. We tracked down the person at the center of the defense team's case. The man they say is responsible for the disappearance of Michelle Harris, Stacy Stewart.
Am I scapegoating this or attempt? Yeah, absolutely.
Stewart never defended himself in court. He agreed to tell his story to Crime Watch Daily exclusively.
I had no involvement with Michelle's disappearance. Whatever happened to her, I had no involvement whatsoever.
Stewart admits he knew Michelle from Lefties, but had no personal relationship with her.
I can only say it so many times that, I never was alone with Michelle Harris.
What about his truck seeming to match the one seen by Kevin Tubbs?
For somebody to drive by and, hey, that's a blue or a black truck, it's kind of hard to tell.
Stacy says the items found in the pit had nothing to do with him. He hadn't been back to the house for almost 15 years, but he does admit Chris Thomason showed up at his house with bloody clothes.
He came to the door. I'd said something about, hey, y'all kill a deer or you been hunting or something? And I didn't get no response out of it, but I do know that those clothes got burned. Not the burn pit, but also had a burned barrel.
Stewart denies the clothes being burned the day after Michelle disappeared, and he claims he didn't testify at trial because he feared Cal's defense team.
I would have testified if I would have been not threatened like several times, and Mr. Barquette had told me in an interview that, you need to just go ahead and fess up. You just can't coax me into believing something that never happened.
Bruce Barquette responded to Stewart's claim, stating, Thomason took the fifth. Stewart fled and avoided being served. Clearly, they're hiding something. Not surprising, given that we know they were burning bloody clothes the day after Michelle disappeared. Stewart says despite his denials, just like Cal Harris, he'll be forever living under a cloud of suspicion.
I'm always looking behind my shoulder and knowing that at any given time, any day, that law enforcement, any kind of agency could show up, arrest me, have a trial that'd probably last a day, and nobody would ever hear from me again.
Does Stewart think Cal killed Michelle?
I don't know if he was involved, and I'm not that type of person to judge him, because I know what it feels like. Speculation hurts. And if he had something to do with it, he got away with it, hey, he can live with it.
Through it all, Cal and Michelle's 4 kids have stood by their father. Jenna and Tanner were only 4 and 2 the day their mom disappeared.
Have you always believed in your father's innocence?
Yes. If he did have something to do with it, then he wouldn't have fought so hard. Any person who knows that they're guilty wouldn't have gone to the extreme lengths that he went to come home.
I've just known all along that he's innocent. Besides the fact that he's my father, it's just he's not secretive, he's not mean or abusive.
If your mom is watching over you right now, what would you want her to know?
I would just want her to be proud of me.
I just miss her a lot. I think life would be a lot simpler if she was still here.
And in his next chapter, Cal says he will now be filing a civil suit against the New York State Police in Tioga County District Attorney's Office.
What is your message today to the district attorney?
You abused your power. You did this strictly for your own career and your own personal agenda. You got greedy, and now you're going to pay.
Though Michelle Harris's murder remains a mystery, it seems the man who has stood accused so often is now committed to retaliating in his own way.
It seems that you have a lot of fight left in you.
Oh, absolutely.
What are you planning to do with this anger?
We're going to go after them.
Crime Watch Daily reached out to the New York State Police, who said, quote, "We appreciate the opportunity, but we will decline responding to his allegations." Former Tioga County District Attorney Gerald Keene never responded, and current Tioga County District Attorney Kirk Martin responded saying he has no comment.